Hang time!
Warning contains somewhat mature content, including language, brief violence, and mild sexual themes, and may not be suitable for people under age 14. It was cold. I lifted my head and gasped, feeling a crick in my neck. As I sat up, I realized my entire body ached, and looking around, I saw that it was because I was passed out on a concrete floor. My eyes scanned the room I was in. It was dark, damp, cold, and seemed to be covered in rust or... There was a steel door, and I stood up quickly to try and open it. I froze when I saw that there was no handle. I was locked in. The metal was rusted, and there were old splatters of blood on the surface, even a bloody handprint. Right in the upper center of the door, written in red, was "Don't leave." I really hoped the writing wasn't blood as well.
"Hello,"
echoed a familiar, eerie voice. I looked around, trying to figure out where I was coming from, but it seemed to be surrounding me.
"How are you today, Ray?"
"Anna?" I asked tentatively, but coughed, as it had come out as a croak. My throat was sore, as if I had been screaming. Annatier chuckled, and I felt a shiver run up my spine.
"Welcome, Reitanna,"
she said soothingly, but I was terrified all the same.
"You're in my world now."
"Anna, seriously, this isn't funny," I called out, trying to gain my voice back.
"I disagree."
Suddenly noticing a dull ache from my left arm, I looked down and saw many fresh slashes. I became enraged. "Anna!" I shouted at her, and she howled with laughter. "This is not funny! Let me out!"
"Can't you read, Princess?"
Annatier giggled again.
"The door says don't leave. You won't be leaving. If you do, I'll be oh so alone."
I took a deep breath, gently wiping the blood off my arm with my shirt. "Annatier, listen," I said gently, trying to calm myself. "I don't know what happened, but I know we can overcome this. Let's just go back to Smilesville and make a cake or something."
"You really think that's going to work on me?"
she shrieked, and I flinched, covering my ears.
"I'm done, Reitanna! Done! I'm tired of everything, and I'm tired of you! I'm going to keep you here forever! Welcome to my world! You're in my domain now!"
"Anna, what happened?" I was trying not to cry.
"You won't be leaving."
Her voice had done a complete 180 and was now low and soft.
"Unless you finally exit. How about it? Want to play a game?"
"What happened?" Annatier laughed again.
"Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies," she
sang, and then all was deafeningly quiet. "Anna?" I called, shivering from the cold air. "Annatier?" There was no answer. Frightened, I took a few steps away from the door and saw an entrance to a hallway. Maybe if I just humor her, she'll calm down and let me go, I thought to myself. Just to be certain, I patted around my torso and hips to check for my cell phone. Annatier's smarter than that, so naturally it wasn't there. With a deep breath, I ventured forward and into the dark hall. I don't think I've ever seen something so dark, except for maybe my old bedroom that had no windows. I had always imagined what it'd be like to find myself in a horror survival type situation, and I would have liked to think that I could handle it. I was pretty certain I was about to prove myself wrong. "Really?" I muttered incredulously, coming to a descending set of stairs. There was a giggle.
"Keep going,"
Annatier sang, and then it was silent once more. I was shaking nearly as bad as I was when Booth World Industries called me back the first time. It didn't help that I don't do well going downstairs because I was nearly pushed down an escalator when I was younger. Ever since then, I've had trouble with descending steps. "Couldn't have given me a flashlight," I murmured angrily, trying to treat the situation like a chore instead of a nightmare. No candle, no glow stick, no iPod. Tool would really help me right now. Shaking, I touched the wall to keep myself steady, but recoiled with a surprised yelp. The wall was cold and damp, but it felt like more than condensation. I attempted to look at my hands in the little light I had that came from absolutely nowhere. Desperately wiping them on my shirt, I tried to tell myself that my palms hadn't just been covered with something dark. A very rusty and bloody metal sign came into view at the bottom of the stairs. It was screwed into the wall and had the number 2 written on it. I found myself in yet another hallway, only this one was much longer. My footsteps echoed as I continued on, and I regretted ever wishing that I'd finally experienced something like this. I knew full well that, if I found myself in Silent Hill or something, I wouldn't be all butterflies and rainbows, I'd be crying my head off. Again, though, I would have liked to think that part of me felt it was so super-duper awesome. Well, this was not super-duper awesome at all. Yet another downward staircase came into view, and I cursed my usual string of nonsensical swears, but knew I had no choice but to keep going. Annatier's voice suddenly sounded again, making me jump.
Down, down, down we go. Where we'll stop, we'll never know,
she sang. So, she was leading me continuously downward, huh? Something very bad must have happened to literally bring me spiraling down as far as I could go. Would she really open an exit when I got to the bottom? How far was the end anyway? Another sign was at the bottom on an identical wall, but this one had the number 3 on it. I mouthed wordlessly in disappointed shock. It felt as though I'd already gone down like 10 levels, but I was only on floor 3? Seething, I turned right, and found myself in yet another hallway. The atmosphere was eerie and frightening. I'd hear breathing, different sets of footsteps, creaking, laughing, and screaming. I knew the laughter was Annatier, but the screaming was mine. It sounded as though it was miles away, and it was shrill, as if I was being murdered. It was a scream that rarely came out of my mouth. What was worse, I heard it multiple times. After going down a few floors, I felt a little breathless, for I wasn't in the best shape. I nearly had a heart attack when I heard a deafening crack from behind me, sounding like a mass of bones and meat being crushed. I turned and went back the way I came, but gasped as I saw that a new wall was blocking my way back up. Damn it! I couldn't help but shout, and Annatier giggled again. She was making fun of me. When I get my hands on you! When no other response came, I kept walking through the hallway, trying to ignore the musty smell of mildew and decaying metal. Looking down at the floor, I was certain I saw even more bloodstains. What the hell did Annatier keep down here? On floor 12, I discovered a small window in the middle of the right wall in the hallway. Peering through, I saw nothing but utter blackness, as if there was just nothing out there. Seeing something like this in real life was much different than seeing it in a game. My heart was beating so hard in my chest, it almost hurt. Some of the halls didn't turn immediately to a staircase, but instead led into multiple turns, mazes, or even large rooms. There was one where I had descended what resembled steps to a gazebo, and the room I found myself in was twice as big as the very first room I started out in. I was half expecting something to pop out at me, but I eventually made it to a rounded doorway and returned to the never-ending halls and stairs. It all looked the same, and it was beginning to irritate me. Not only that, but I heard even more sounds. Annatier continuing to giggle, her singing or speaking in reverse, and different kinds of crying and sobbing. Honestly, every voice sounded like either hers or mine, and when it sounded like mine, it really disturbed me. I don't like the sound of my own crying. I think it sounds very ugly. A face suddenly appeared a few yards away from me, but disappeared as quickly as it came with a loud hiss. It made me shriek and jump, my involuntary habit of constant shaking and twitching becoming worse as I was overcome with fear and anxiety. The face had resembled the sort of face you'd expect to see on a ghost, but I didn't get a good look at it. My progress became slower as I anticipated being frightened again.
Aren't we having fun?
Said Annatier softly, giggling menacingly. Not caring that the walls were covered in blood and mold, I leaned against one, breathing heavily from exhaustion. Anna, please, I begged, not even sure what floor I was on.
Peace is just another word that you don't know the meaning of,
she sang, but then suddenly screamed,
just like the word sorry!
Her shrieks were so deafening, it caused a ringing sound in my ears that lasted for a few seconds. If you just tell me what happened. Once again, she had gone quiet. I slammed my fist against the wall in frustration, but instead of making a thump sound, it made a squish. Aw, come on, that's nasty. I was glad that I was pretty desensitized to gore, but coming face to face with it shocked me a bit. When I came across the next sign, I discovered I was on floor 36. I was tired, out of breath, and dehydrated, and all of it put together gave me a horrible migraine. I continued down the next hall, though, trying to tell myself that it'd be over soon. Just then, it became extremely dark, and high-pitched whines and screams came from all around me, Annatier's maniacal laughter topping it off. Covering my ears and trying to figure out what was going on, the hall lit up for a mere second, revealing a figure with one of the most terrifying faces I've ever seen. It flashed a second time, the laughter even louder, and the thing had come much closer. Unable to hear my own screams over the increasingly loud sounds, I backed up as fast as I could, hitting the wall where the sign was. A third flash, and the thing was right in front of me, and I got a good look at its face. I think my heart stopped at this point. The laughter faded away, and another high-pitched ringing lingered in my ears as the atmosphere returned to its previous state. Panting and clutching my chest, I tried to register what I just saw. The thing's body was dark, almost appearing jet black, but it looked as though it was decaying like a dead body would. The face was different, though. God, that face. It was much lighter in color, but it was cracked and bloody, a horrible smile stretched across it. The grin showed razor-sharp teeth stained with blood, and its eyes were surrounded by heavy shadows, the irises yellow with small black pupils. They had resembled Annatier's left eye. What was going on? It was laughing in Anna's voice, and it was so loud, so very loud. What would have happened if I hadn't backed away from it? Was Anna actually intending to really kill me this time? After quite a few minutes, I was convinced that the figure wasn't going to appear again in this hallway, and I hoped it didn't appear anywhere else during my journey down the staircase.
Wasn't that so much fun?
Annatier squealed, resembling my impression of Pinkie Pie.
It really liked you.
What was it? I asked, going down another set of stairs.
That was Manic,
Anna replied.
It's so very happy. So very happy!
The repeated phrase was filled with another burst of rage, but then she giggled again.
Manic's not done playing with you, Raven. Good thing you're a gamer.
With a last shriek of laughter, her voice was gone. I sighed, reaching the next floor, the next hall, and the next set of freaking stairs. After a few more floors, I attempted to entertain myself by singing, or saying, going up the stairs, going down the stairs, going up the stairs, going down the stairs, or going up the sideways stairs. I even managed to get halfway through Bohemian Rhapsody. The hall had great acoustics, before anything else happened. A harsh wind blew past me, and I heard what sounded like children playing. Happy giggles, playful screams of joy, and tiny voices met my ears. Then I seemed to be surrounded by blurry white figures, ghosts of children. They were running past me in jagged slow motion, and they didn't appear to even notice me. I'm not sure, but I think they were playing tag. That was it. The children ran past me, and then were gone, as was the gust of wind. However, even though they hadn't touched me, I felt a wave of sadness, remembering being a clueless child playing in the park. I was so happy back then. Then it hit me. Sudden sounds of children screaming and crying, pleading with some unknown force. Suppressed memories began to flood my head, and I remembered that being a child was not always fun and games, but also horror and trauma. I heard certain phrases and voices that triggered images I had tried so desperately to hide away. But just as soon as it started, it stopped again.
Innocence,
whispered Annatier, and that was all she said. I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists, not sure if I was angry, scared, or overwhelmed by sadness.
This is bullshit!
I yelled, my voice echoing down the hall. Nothing responded to this outburst, so I trudged forward, feeling a bit dizzy. Many floors later, I found myself in one of the many empty rooms, and I collapsed in a corner, weak and stressed to no end. My stomach growled angrily, my throat was dry, I was tired, my head hurt. Frankly, everything on my body hurt. As I sat there trying to regain some energy, I heard a very depressing-sounding moan. It broke my heart, immediately wanting to know who was so depressed, but I couldn't stand. There were soft coos and whimpers, all very pathetic and sad. I listened to the slow footsteps, which sounded like the owner was trudging along without any motivation to keep going. It was coming closer, and I used the wall to bring myself to a standing position, prepared to see who, or what, was so downtrodden. I did not expect the sounds to be coming from an 8-foot-tall creature that looked like a skeleton with skin stretched taut over the bones. It was quite obscene, drastically unproportional, exposed skull missing a jawbone as well as a nasal passage, and sporting just a few strands of hair, along with a cracked hole on the right parietal ridge. The thing had a few bloodstains, mostly on its cranium, and the exposed bones included the right half of the rib cage, left forearm, right shin, and had an open abdomen, exposing its intestines. There seemed to be no muscle mass, except for in the lower half of the right arm, which looked entirely normal. It was separated from the upper portion of the arm with a bloody bandage, and pieces of colored yarn hung loosely around the wrist. Even though the skin was wide open, there was barely any blood, but the creature had a few drops of pure black liquid oozing from certain places, mostly from the crack in the skull, which exposed what I assumed was a brain, but looked dark and dead. I'd have to say one of the strangest attributes was the heart, which was bright pink and actually in the form of a heart shape instead of the organ. There were a couple of stitches on it, but it seemed to be suspended in the ribcage with no sign of being attached to something. It beat very slowly, as if it was moments from stopping altogether. The thing let out another solemn moan, and slowly turned toward me, body in a deep slouch, head tilted lazily. The eyes were bloodshot, once again mimicking Annatier's yellow eye, but they were rolled upward, almost into the back of its head. The weird thing was, it had very pretty eyelashes. The creature sighed sadly, crying that strange black fluid. It too was using Anna's voice. Though horrific in appearance, I felt sorry for it. "What's wrong?" I squeaked, unsure if I should have spoken at all. I think it was looking at me, but the eyes were still pointed upward.
"I just want to be pretty," it whimpered.
Suddenly, part of its intestines slipped from the gaping hole in its abdomen, and it hastily scooped them back up and into its body. You're pretty," I said, and it turned its attention back to me.
"I'm ugly,"
it moaned with a sniffle.
"I'm ugly and fat. I pulled all my hair out. I just want to be pretty."
"You have very lovely eyelashes," I told it, trying to sound confident. "I'm jealous of them." The creature hesitated, still looking at me, and then spoke again.
"You have pretty hair."
My hair was currently colored a vibrant orange. I smiled weakly. "Thank you." It stepped closer.
"I'm jealous of it."
I started feeling a bit uncomfortable. We all have good qualities."
"Your hair is so pretty."
It was towering over me now, and I felt my lungs stop working as I stared into its bloody eyes.
"I want it."
Without warning, its left hand, the one with thin, bony fingers, grasped a chunk of hair on top of my head. I was so terrified I couldn't move, couldn't even make a sound. That changed when the creature began to pull, and a short cry of pain escaped me. My scalp was usually pretty tough, but the thing was yanking unbearably hard. Feeling strands part from my head, I flailed my arms as sporadically as I could to try and loosen its grip. As it continued to pull, I became desperate and plunged my hand into its abdomen, grabbing part of the intestine, and tugged. To my surprise, the entire large and small intestines spilled out onto the floor in a fleshy pile, as if they hadn't been attached to the creature's insides in any way. There wasn't even blood, just some kind of slimy, transparent mucus. The creature released me, but a few bright orange hairs were tangled in its fingers. As it bent down to pick up its entrails, I booked it, sprinting down the next hall, and succeeded in running down the stairs despite my fear. I even jumped the last 2 steps, and was impressed that I landed on my feet, though it caused my right ankle to throb. I had torn the tendon when I was 14, and it never actually healed. Panting, I listened hard, but no longer heard the creature's sounds of despair.
"The further you go, the darker it gets,"
sang Annatier's voice, but it was barely audible. "What was that thing?" I spat, trying to catch my breath, which came in huffs after running so far and fast.
"Obsession,"
she replied.
"Gorgeous, wasn't it?"
"I want to go home," I whimpered, unable to stop tears welling up in my eyes.
"You are home."
Silence once more. I didn't want to go on. I was so tired and weak. What else was I going to find down here? I'd probably die of fright before any monster got a chance to kill me. I just had to wish for something scary to happen to me, I muttered, walking slowly onward. On the wall, I noticed another empty window, identical to the first one I saw. I ignored it. By floor 71, most of my pain and hunger turned into pure fatigue, and I was feeling sleepy. There's no way I'm falling asleep in here, I thought, and decided to start singing again to keep myself awake. Desperate for something happy, I began singing a medley of mindless self-indulgence songs, and after a short time, Annatier actually joined in. I confidently sang louder, hoping it would calm her down and end this nightmare. In the middle of Bring the Pain, I heard an odd scuttling sound, and I stopped. Realizing I was no longer singing, Anna ceased as well, ending with a dejected, "Aww." I listened hard. It sounded so close to me, the sort of sound you'd expect to hear from a crab or something when it walks on a hard surface. Then I realized it was coming from above me. When I looked up, I screamed as loudly and piercing as the murderous screams I'd been hearing my entire time in the staircase. This thing looked like a mix between a giant spider, a crab, and an oversized rotting claw. Its body was perfectly spherical, the size of a softball, color and texture blending in well with the grimy ceiling. There were 7 horrifying legs, 4 short ones in the front, and 3 longer ones on its back. The eyes that peered at me actually looked like Annatier's right eye instead of the left, having crosshairs as opposed to iris or pupil. Looking closer, it appeared to have 3 more eyes, but they were closed. The most gruesome thing about its face were the teeth, which were at least 4 inches long, razor-sharp, and were yellow, decaying, and stained with blood. As soon as its exposed eyes met mine, it too started screaming, but it sounded like a rabbit's shriek when endangered. The other 3 eyes opened, which were, again, Annatier's left yellow eye, and the toothless jaw opened impossibly wide for the size of its face. Before I had a chance to run, it dropped from the ceiling and onto my back. Being very afraid of spiders, and since the thing looked very close to an arachnid, I was in hysterics, crying and trying to shake the thing off. I was met with excruciating pain as the massive teeth sank into my upper arm. The agony increased when a white-hot wave seemed to course through my entire body in less than a second, and I fell to my knees and slumped to the floor. As my eyes slowly opened again, I was struck by even more fear. The open sky was cloudy and dark, and I was laying on a rickety wooden raft in the middle of the ocean, water stone black and ice cold. I was terrified of being in the middle of vast bodies of water, and the fact that the raft looked as though it was about to break apart didn't help. I felt something on my bare leg, and looking down, I saw that not only was I wearing absolutely nothing, but the raft was covered in massive black widows. Panic overwhelmed me, but if I moved, I'd fall in the water, and if I stayed, I'd get bitten, and if I got bitten, I'd become unconscious and fall into the water. The spiders began to change to different species of arachnid, even becoming a few types of scorpions. I started attempting to splash water on them with my hand, but the dark sky suddenly turned fire red, and I saw a volcano in the distance, oozing scorching hot lava. If there was anything in the world I feared more, it was volcanoes. Impossibly, the lava made its way along the surface of the water as if it was solid, and my spider companions crawled up my body and onto my head, tearing out my hair violently. The lava moved ever closer, and walking right in the midst of it were figures of people I recognized, my family. They approached at the same slow speed as the hot magma, their expressions accusatory, voices jeering incoherently. The last thing I remember was the lava being just inches away from me, behind me a gigantic tidal wave, and a large sickle held to my throat by someone whose face I could not see. The spiders crawled into my eyes, mouth, ears, nose, and everything was so deafening loud. Then I woke up. Covered in a cold sweat, I panted, looking around to see that I was back in the dark hallway. Whatever that thing was that bit me had gone, but my arm was still bleeding freely.
Fear of the name is fear of the thing itself,
Annatier quoted.
There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Do you get it? Being afraid of fear makes your fears more frightening.
Anna, I'm going to die in here, I croaked hoarsely.
Oh, so sorry,
she said in a stereotypical Asian accent.
I not to speak English.
Sighing heavily, I double-checked that my hair was still on my head, and then I took off my pants. I sat there for a long while, using my teeth to tear at one of the legs until I was able to rip it off. After tying the fabric around my bite, I pulled the damaged pants back on, stood up, and continued. Carry on, my wayward son, I sang quietly. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. A small chuckle escaped me, having always been reminded of that song when in Wayward City. It was almost conditioned. I couldn't tell what floor I was on when I found a sign that said, stop. Yeah? I said loudly. I'll stop if you get me the fuck out of here! When I was met again with no rebuttal, I entered the next hallway, but an ear-shattering shriek stopped me in my tracks. Following this demand was whimpering and panting for a few seconds before it started to scream again. This time, it wasn't in the form of words. The sign said stop, and whatever was in front of me told me to stay still. So was I just supposed to sit in this corner forever? I inched around the hall, and my heart jumped as I saw the silhouette of a humanoid figure very similar to Manic. It wasn't doing much, just standing there, its body swaying slightly, arms doing something I couldn't make out. I crept a little closer, discovering that the thing was standing in the corner of a room just like the others I had encountered.
Go away!
It shrieked, and I flinched, but curiosity kept my feet moving. It crouched down and hid its hands on the floor, crying, wailing, screaming, and shouting things like,
I hate you! Don't touch me!
And,
Where's Mommy?
like all the other things, it used Anna's voice. When I got close enough, another surge of fear hit me. The thing definitely looked very similar to Manic, but it was almost entirely skinless, the remaining skin being jet black. The wounds looked as though they had been caused by someone peeling the skin off of the body, and others appeared to have been further mutilated. Just like Manic, it had Annatier's yellow eyes and a frightening smile that stretched across his whole face. Unlike Manic, however, the teeth were large, blunt, and yellow with rot. The lips appeared to have been ripped away. Its eyes were wide and red, as if it had been crying for hours, and the smile contrasted with the emotion it seemed to be feeling. I finally saw the hands, which had no distinguishable digits, almost like the fingers didn't get a chance to form, and they were digging violently at its wounds. Then, looking down, I saw that it either had no feet, or it was fused to the floor by the ankles. I assumed it wasn't able to walk.
Don't move!
It shrieked at me, its wild eyes locked on mine.
Leave me alone! I don't want to be alone! Don't leave me here! Go away!
Utterly confused, I turned away from it, but was suddenly grabbed by an unseen force. The creature was lifting me in the air with what felt like invisible hands.
Don't leave me!
Okay! I forced out, its invisible hands wrapping around my torso painfully tight. Then it violently started to shake me.
Get away from me!
Just as I felt the hands tighten, nearly breaking my ribs, I heard soft humming. It was Annatier, and she was humming her lullaby. The creature stopped screaming and dropped me, the impact momentarily knocking the wind out of me. Watching it as I lay on the cold concrete, the strange creature started to sway very slightly to the tempo of the song, and it almost looked content. I took my chance to get up and run, though I was limping now, the fall having twisted the same ankle that's already been injured for almost 10 years. Once down another flight of stairs, the next sign displayed the number 112. Annatier had stopped humming now, but she started to speak again.
Music always calms the savage beast,
She said gently.
A lullaby is the perfect remedy for a tantrum.
Annatier, I will do anything you want if you let me go, I told her weakly, leaning against the damp wall.
Anything?
Anything! She paused for a moment, and then let out a tiny giggle.
No, that's okay. I'm having fun.
Son of a bitch! She gave another maniacal laugh before disappearing. I turned and rested my forehead on the wall, bumping it a couple of times, but not hard enough to hurt myself. I did succeed in covering my face with bloody goop, but I didn't care. I privately wondered what Anna would do if I refused to go any further, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to chance staying in one place, lest fear or obsession bump into me again. Reluctantly, I ventured on, though much slower due to my fatigue and blood loss from my arm. It didn't help that I was lightheaded from hunger as well. When I reached the next floor, I actually thought my vision had gone double, for there were 2 entrances beside each other. What? I muttered incredulously, and decided to take the right entrance. However, instead of more stairs, I stopped right on the edge of a square hole, and beyond it was just another wall, so it was a complete dead end. Speaking of dead, Anna, where does this hole lead? I asked weakly, directing my voice toward the ceiling, as if that's where she was this whole time.
Why don't you jump down and find out?
She hissed acidly, and that told me everything I needed to know. I backtracked and took the left entrance instead, unsurprisingly coming to yet another staircase. I found myself on floor 120. With a loud groan, I trudged down the next hall, but it suddenly went pitch black. Trying to find my bearings, I heard what sounded like screeches of metal machinery, but underneath it was soft laughter. Running forward, I bumped into a wall and figured I must have gotten turned around again. However, when I tried to go back the way I came, I was face to face with Manic for the second time. Its walk was so fluid that it almost appeared to be gliding toward me. As Manic's laugh increased in volume, I backed up against the wall that was blocking my way forward, so frightened that I couldn't make a single sound. The odor that was emanating off of the creature's body was putrid, smelling like something dead and decomposing. Manic was just inches from me, and I could see every single tooth in its grin, each bloody, rotting, and frighteningly sharp. I suddenly felt the wall behind me disappear, and instinctively, I turned and sprinted down the stairs that it had revealed. I ended up tripping halfway down, but was able to catch myself before tumbling the rest of the way. Clutching the stair I caught myself on, I looked up. Manic was not chasing me. I became aware of tremendous pain on my nose, and felt it. It was bleeding. I must have hit it when I tripped, and I really hoped it wasn't broken. I'm very prone to nosebleeds, so a good, firm hit could result in one without actual damage. Now in much more pain than I had been in before, I carefully made my way to the next floor, 121. My ankle was twisted, I had a huge bite on my arm, my head hurt, and my nose was possibly broken. I was about to give up. Sometimes it's easier to just snuff it than endure extreme torture while trying to save yourself. After many more floors, I leaned against a wall again and said, "Hey, Anna?"
Yes?
She replied excitedly. I laughed, shaking my head incredulously. "I'm gonna, start eating my damn arm," I told her. "How long have I even been down here?"
I don't know.
Annatier said thoughtfully.
A couple of days, I think.
"I would prefer not to eat my arm," I said sarcastically. "If you really want me to keep playing your little game, you're going to have to give me some food."
You could always wait for Obsession to find you again.
She giggled.
Then you could eat its intestines.
Wow, great idea. I'm totally going to do that. With a groan, I continued onward, wiping dried blood from my nostrils and upper lip.
Ray, I get the feeling you're kind of upset.
"What on encephalon makes you think that?" I said apathetically.
Stop patronizing me!
Annatier shrieked without warning, and the entire hall began to shake as if there was an earthquake. A deafening series of growls and screeches echoed from all around me, and I ended up losing my balance, falling to the floor. I covered my ears desperately, and after a few seconds, the quake ceased. Lowering my hands from my head, I noticed a new pain on my bare knee. I had scraped it when I fell.
I'm having so much fun!
I bellowed, enraged. I didn't receive a reply as I carefully got back to my feet, and my limp was even worse now as I started walking again. "Well, the hospital's sure going to have a fun fixing me up if I get out of here," I mumbled. By floor 129, I was truly considering to just sit on the floor and wait for something, whether it be monster or exhaustion, to kill me. Before I could, though, I was surprised to see something very small and pretty hovering toward me. I watched it as it came closer, and it appeared to be some kind of bubble.
Hello?
It said cheerily, and just like the other creatures, it was Annatier's voice. I tilted my head in confusion. This thing wasn't scary at all. It was definitely a bubble, but inside was swirling rainbow-colored mist. Slowly floating through the mist was a small sphere, which looked like a dark marble painted with metallic colors. It was mesmerizing to watch, especially since I was so tired it was only a matter of time before I started hallucinating anyway. "What are you?" I asked hoarsely. The bubble zoomed around my head, reminding me of Navi from Ocarina of Time.
Don't worry, I'm your friend,
The bubble replied. "I have about 200 reasons why I don't believe you," I growled. All of a sudden, the bubble split into 3 different bubbles, and together they formed a frowny face.
You're so mean!
It whimpered, before merging into a single bubble once more. "That was neat," I admitted.
I can be anything. I can be a bird.
It morphed into a very detailed hummingbird.
I can be a bowl of fruit.
It morphed into a bowl of fruit.
I can even be a hat.
Before I knew it, there was a bubble top hat sitting on my head. "That's great," I said. "But you can't give me food or water, can you?"
No,
said the bubble.
But I can be a companion.
It transformed into a life-sized man, face and all. He was Japanese, with long hair, as well as a lean body type I usually gave my male characters. His clothes were also very punkish, another attribute I put on most of my guys.
Aren't I sexy?
"Yes," I said, getting annoyed. "You're a very attractive bubble. Can I go?"
Oh, maybe this isn't to your liking.
The man's body became a bit shorter and very curvy. The bubble was now a busty girl with accentuated hips and short hair pulled into pigtails. She was also Japanese, having an adorable, round face with puffy lips. She was wearing a very skimpy dress that didn't leave much to the imagination.
How about now?
"I never thought a bubble would try to seduce me," I replied. It was quite unfair, seeing as how both the man and the girl were definitely my type. The bubble returned to its original form.
You're no fun.
It sighed. I'm out of here, I grumbled, and despite my previous plan of waiting to die, I continued my adventure, but the bubble was following me.
You're furious.
It said sweetly, and I rolled my eyes. Yes, I am, I snapped. Can you turn into a little car or something so I don't have to walk?
I could be a car, but I wouldn't be able to support your weight.
Bully. I felt the bubble sit on my shoulder, and looking sideways at it, I noticed it had become a rat. Though I was annoyed by it pestering me, having something cute on my shoulder put my mind a little at ease.
What are you going to do to Anna when you find her?
It asked in yet another sugary tone. I don't know yet, I admitted.
You should tie her up and torture her,
said the bubble.
Make her pay for putting you through so much hell.
I stopped walking, my brow furrowed. What's your name? I asked slowly.
Can't you take a guess?
Narrowing my eyes at it, I clicked my tongue. Considering everything down here seems to be named after emotions and such, I'd say you're probably Revenge.
You're so smart!
Revenge giggled.
I'm not like the other creatures down here. I'm not going to hurt you.
Revenge is so sweet, I murmured, realization dawning on me. Without another word, I kept walking.
So, are you going to hurt her?
It asked, now becoming a bat that flew beside me. I told you I don't know what I'm going to do to her.
You should pull her eyes out.
I'm not going to pull my other's eyes out, not even if she's trying to kill me.
But Ray, don't you want to get even? Don't you want to make her pay?
It was amazing how friendly it was speaking.
Or make her feel worse than she made you feel. Don't you want revenge?
My stomach flipped over, as if I had just read a particularly satisfying sentence in a yaoi fanfiction. Of course I do, I replied, and was surprised to hear my own voice filled with malice. Usually I only spoke like that when being threatening. Lady was quite familiar with the tone.
So then what?
Persisted Revenge.
You know what she would really hate? Waterboarding!
I'm not going to torture her. The bubble became an exact copy of me, walking backward ahead of me.
But it would be so satisfying.
It cooed.
I know you love punishing those who have hurt you. Don't you want to teach her a lesson?
I stopped walking again, and so did my bubble clone. Why are you telling me everything I already know? I asked it.
What, that you need to make her pay?
Replied Revenge, a cruel smile stretching across the copy of my face.
Don't you want to put her on the list?
Not Anna. She doesn't go on the list.
Why not?
Because she's part of me. She's been with me since that day my brain began to form in that stupid womb. I don't get revenge on my loved ones.
Why do you love someone that hurts you?
I pulled one of my earrings out of my left ear and jabbed the end of it at Revenge's face. The bubble popped, but to my dismay, the little sphere that was inside it spun around in the air, creating a little cyclone out of the rainbow mist, and the bubble was back in its original form.
You can't get rid of me.
Then just leave me alone, I said, feeling very sad.
Why do you love someone that hurts you?
It repeated, and my eyes fell to the floor. Because love hurts anyway, I said softly. True love for anyone or anything hurts so bad. I suddenly remembered Obsession's heart, and it started to make sense. It tears at your heart, and then it sews it right back up, only to tear it again. But it's an emotion worth feeling. And if I die in this stairwell, I want Annatier to know that I still love him.
Do you really think you should love something that doesn't love you back?
Asked Revenge sweetly, morphing into a heart and breaking in half. She does love me, I said, staring at the bubble. That's why she's doing this. Something very bad happened, and she's punishing me. I have no idea what drove her to such lengths, but she wouldn't be so passionate about putting me through hell if she didn't love me. Once again, Revenge turned into 3 bubbles, but this time they sat in a row, forming an ellipsis. Being too depressed to say anything more, I popped all 3 bubbles with my earring and stepped past the mist that still lingered. As I put my earring back in my ear, I noticed that Revenge was no longer following me. I wasn't sure if I was now motivated to reach the end, or if I just didn't care anymore about what happened. I was pretty sure I heard fear scuttling above me, but I didn't look around for it, just kept going. After floor 130, the signs stopped displaying numbers, but instead complete gibberish. Sometimes they would have a single letter like X or J. Other times there would be things like capital MOX circumflex, or left parentheses plus sign right parentheses greater than sign. There was even a sign that told me I was on floor 2 again, but obviously it was lying. The last sign I saw said capital S, lowercase h, 6, and as I traveled down the hallway, I heard that morbid crunching sound again, the one I heard when Annatier put up the first wall to keep me from going back up. Continuing a few steps forward, I saw yet another wall, so I turned to go back, but there was a wall there too. I was stuck in about 3 or 4 feet worth of hallway, and it was extremely dark. This is it, I thought to myself, pressing my back against the wall and sliding to the floor. This is where I die. I didn't even get to write my fucking will. Laughter sounded right in front of me, and I looked up to see Manic striding in my direction. I didn't move. I had given up. I felt myself crying, but my eyes lingered on that terrifying face. What was it going to do to me?
Manic,
said a soft voice, and Manic stopped walking toward me.
that's enough.
A second later, Manic vanished, and instead Annatier came up to me. I was unsure of whether to hate her or be grateful that she stopped that monster. The expression on her face told me that she was feeling regret. Annatier, I mumbled weakly, trembling as I sobbed. Why did you do this? She knelt in front of me, placing her clawed hands on my knees.
I heard what you said.
She replied, her own lip trembling.
You said you still loved me, even though I did all this.
Well, you know I never lie, I said, and my vision began to blur.
I'm sorry.
Her voice seemed to fade away as I lost consciousness. The next time I opened my eyes, I was in a brightly lit room. I squinted, the light stinging my eyes as I looked around to try and figure out where I was. I was laying in a bed with mint green blankets, and there was an IV in my right arm. It took me a moment to see that Sempai was sitting in a chair next to me.
"Oh my god!"
she exclaimed, and a few more people surrounded my bed.
She's awake,
I heard a low voice say, and I recognized it as Koda's. What happened? I croaked, squinting around to make out everyone's faces. Tenji, Evelyn, Michael, and Cherry were all there, but I also saw a couple of nurses, who seemed relieved that I was awake.
You've been in a coma for like a week,
said Michael, wiping his fogged-up glasses with his shirt.
"We didn't even know where you had gone,"
added Senpai.
"You went missing for days, and we actually thought the Jisatsu brothers took you. But when they assured us they didn't, they helped with the search party."
Everyone was looking for you, said Cherry. The Nyatmas said she searched Annatier's house and said she wasn't there. When we couldn't find her either, we assumed she took you. She did, I said, but I don't know why.
"Well, she told us what happened,"
said Senpai, her tone full of spite.
"I'm sure you noticed the self-inflicted cuts on your left wrist."
I looked at my wrist and saw a bandage wrapped around it, though I remembered seeing it when I woke up in Annatier's staircase. Yes, I replied. I figured she took me over, but why?
Apparently you were at her house, but then she brought up...
Koda started, but Tenji elbowed him sharply in the ribs.
Ow! She brought up a subject that really upset you,
Tenji continued.
And so you tried to leave to go home, but she was so determined to keep you there that she lost control of her anger and possessed you. I guess she thought that wasn't enough, so she took you to her... What did she call it?
Staircase,
Evelyn said.
Every other has their own dimension, and manic depression others have stairwells that spiral downward for hundreds of miles. Naleve's dimension is a massive room the size of a football field filled with pillows, plushies, and other toys. It's quite nice, actually.
"Ippies is a void,"
Senpai explained.
"It looks like outer space, pitch black and speckled with sparkly stars, and I kind of just float there in nothingness. It's quiet and lonely, and I've only been there once. I'm not sure how long she kept me there, but every now and then I'd see these strange creatures float by."
Anna's staircase had those too, I told them. They were terrifying.
A lot of Ippies were frightening as well. I couldn't scream, though I was completely unable to make a sound, even clapping my hands or exhaling heavily.
Naleve's toy room has a couple creatures hiding amongst the stuffed animals,
Evelyn continued.
They had names like laughter, annoyance, distraction.
"Weird, I don't know the names of Ippies,"
said Senpai. Anna's had odd names too. There was Manic, Tantrum, Fear, Innocence, Revenge, Obsession, and God knows there were probably a lot more.
I am so glad I'm not a host,
Koda whispered. I thought I was going to die down there. I muttered, examining the many bruises I had on my body. I probably would have if I hadn't said I loved Anna. Where is she, anyway? Senpai laughed coldly, as did Koda.
Don't worry, she's in good hands,
she said slyly, and I furrowed my brow questioningly.
Yup, Miss Hazard. They're having a little play date.
I can't imagine the look on her face when she heard what happened.
Oh, she was livid.
I don't think I've seen it be that angry,
said Evelyn with a weak little laugh.
We're not sure what she's doing to Annatier, but her last words were, I'll take care of it.
Well, guys, I'll tell you one thing about my experience. My friends all watched me, and I shook my head, unable to keep from smiling. It'd make one hell of a good video game.